I'm a 23-year-old Italian male living in a not-so-small town in southern Italy. Now, it's not the most secure town in the world. In fact, we have a long history of microcriminality connected to the local mafia. But if you are smart, you can keep yourself out of trouble. I need to explain my daily commute in context first to make things better to understand. Basically, I live in the old part of the town, as it is common for every town to be built around its antique part. And after a 1980 earthquake destroyed a good part of it, it's very affordable to live here, and some parts are beautiful and well kept, while others are not. So you find good families and great folks sharing spaces with more pesky dudes. It doesn't help that the town's castle had been converted into a prison, but luckily only for minor offenders. Now to the encounter itself, which happened just this January. I just came back from uni. It's just a 20-minute drive in the car, but with shitty public transport, it can take up to 1 to 1.5 hours to get home. And as I like to study in the library till it closes at 6:30 p.m., I usually come back home at 8 p.m. or later. I get greeted by my dog. Her name is Maya, a beautiful sweetheart and innocent 1-year-old lab, and I take her for a walk around this part of town, and the castle, since it's her favorite spot to meet other street dogs. Dogs that don't really have an owner, but everyone in the block feeds them. So she was taking longer than usual to do her business, and I was freezing since I was wearing lighter clothes than I should have. I thought it would be a short walk as usual, plus it was snowing, which is super rare here, like super. And it was the first time Maya had seen snow, so she was excited too. For that, I decided to walk back home and grab a jacket to better take delight in this occasion, and on my walk home, to cut it shorter, I had to pass this abandoned building under construction. It's pretty run down. It has just the pillars and floors done, but a lot of kids used it to play and climb around. Now as I walk there, I see this guy standing there, his back facing me, still like a rock, with his head facing up to the first floor of the abandoned building. Dirty beanie hat, heavy winter jacket, and a tracksuit too wide for his build, and there he was, still. At first I froze in the spot too, but it wasn't an extraordinary encounter since there are a lot of weird people around, and I decided to pass on. But the first red alert light was on when I watched Maya, and she had her back fur raised and was looking at this guy dead on. She never did this, and as we walked to him, she kept up this behavior, and as we were walking there, she emitted a low-pitched growl that made this man turn around. I never ever saw his face around there. And if you aren't local, you really can't end up there if you didn't want to. And wow, his face was creepy, with typical greasy hair and an undone 3-day beard. He extended his hand to Maya. "Hey doggy, how cute are you?" Stupidly, that calmed me down a bit. Maybe he was just a mentally ill person walking around. I know some of them around here, and they all pretty much look like him. There is a dormitory for mentally ill people whose families can't or don't want to. Yeah, take care of them near here. But when he was trying to pet my dog, I heard something moving on the first floor's concrete. Thought it must have been a cat, but Maya would have already been jumping around trying to catch him, so I looked up and I saw this little girl, probably around 10 years old. She had only fear in her eyes, wide open and really desperate, and I'm not exaggerating this detail. She had a familiar face though. Must have been one of the kids that play around the building. Now, she must have seen me walking my dog around because as soon as she recognized me or my dog, she caught my eyes and tried to whisper help with her lips. After this, I turned my head around and the creep is watching me now. I would like to say he had the usual creepy smile, but he didn't. He just had a very serious face, looking dead in my eyes. I didn't know what to do. I'm a little over 6 feet tall, I think, and kind of imposing, but I've never fought anyone, and I'm a really peaceful dude. In a fraction of a second, this guy looks up again and says, "Come down, sweetie. We need to get home. The food will get cold." Yeah, sure, totally believable. 10 out of 10. Sarcasm, by the way. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" I ask him. "I'm her uncle. I need to get her home to eat," he says with the most serious look. I was thinking about what to answer, with use as an excuse to bring her down and get her to safety. And being the sarcastic, bitchy type in this situation, I say, "That's strange because I'm her uncle. This doesn't add up." At this point, the little girl has the brilliance to lean off and say, "Hey uncle, can you help me get home? My mom will get worried." Now this guy didn't seem too threatening at the moment, just creepy, so I go under the building to take the little girl, and as I prepare to grab her, Maya, thankfully, bless all the dogs, first growls at him, then barks, Now she usually has a really feminine high-pitched bark, but with this guy, it was really low-pitched and scared even me. To that I turn around and see this guy with a hand behind his back, reaching for something. Oh crap, I think. I can't fight for anything hand to hand. If this guy has a knife, this would end badly. He stops his reaching motion as the bark is now continuous, and in the heat of the moment, the little girl leaned off, and I grabbed her with one arm, the other one keeping Maya at bay as a deterrent, and while she was descending, I asked if she had a phone. No, I don't have it. She said that, and you could hear she was on the brink of crying. So as soon as she touched the ground, I unlocked my phone and gave it to her. She took the phone and immediately legged it. I should have been glad about it, but my immediate thought was, if she did all this to steal my phone, I'll be deadly mad. After all, it wouldn't have been unusual, but I basically asked her to take it, so it would be impossible, I think. Anyways, the girl is gone. I turn around and this dude has a knife out. Not a pocket knife though, one of those big kitchen knives you use to cut bakery bread. And me being so careless in the kitchen, I know how sharp those things can be. So I decided to run away too, but Maya decided, nope, I want to stand here barking at him, and I couldn't manage to pull her away. She's almost 30 kilos, but that was a grip too strong even for her. So we were there stalling, and this guy starts swinging the knife in the air. I want to run, but if I leave my dog, I know she could end up really bad, and even if I managed to pull her, he could run after us. And there we were, him swinging the knife with empty eyes, my dog barking, and me shitting myself not knowing what to do. To make things worse, my hands were freezing cold from not wearing gloves, and the grip leash was really starting to hurt. The thing that still surprised me in that situation is the fact that I'm absolutely sure that people around the block could hear the mess, but no one, not a single person, decided to take a look. Anyways, after what seemed like a long time but was probably less than 2 minutes, I hear heavy footsteps from the street I came from, and from there a lot of people show up, probably her dad and some of her relatives or friends, with a baseball bat. This is not going to end up well, I thought. As soon as the creep saw those men, he threw the knife in my direction. Terrible aim, but I still had to move to not get hit. Luckily, and started to run to me, trying to go in the street in my direction. I didn't even try to block him because I was still frozen by the knife undertow. But Maya bit his leg, ripping a piece of the tracksuit off. I still have it. She's so proud of it. One of her now favorite toys. But the dude didn't even care and ran for his life, with some of the girl's supposed relatives behind him. He eventually managed to get them off, but the girl's father came to me. I thought to thank me, but instead he screamed, "Who the heck is that guy? Huh?" waving the bat around. I looked at the girl telling him to calm down, but he only got more mad until the girl ran up to him telling him that I helped her and gave my phone back. After that, he calmed down and said sorry. Told me thanks for helping her girl and offered to grab me a coffee at his house. Don't worry, not creepy. It's the least you can do to say thanks down here. But I politely refused and went home, deciding that it was already too much stuff to put up with for the night. I was already tired from uni and I slept it off. The next morning, police rang at my bell to take my statement, as the guy managed to run off and showed me a book with all the signal photo IDs and stuff, but nothing came out of it. He probably wasn't even from nearby. You could tell from his dialect accent. It has slight variation from town to town, and that was the end of it. I surely did not do the best I could, but I'm still glad I could help that little girl. I don't know where she would be if I or someone else didn't show up to help. In college, a while ago now, I got into a relationship with a guy. He was fine until he quote-unquote found Jesus. He quickly went crazy, claiming demons spoke to him, trying to buy weapons from shady friends we had, fantasizing about how he would hurt people, and becoming incredibly controlling and physically abusive, nearly killing me a few times. Needless to say, I got the heck out of there. After a few threats and really crazy behaviors, he left me alone for a while, and I thought that was it. I was heading to my dorm after a meeting one night when I decided to pass it and go to the student union, which was right down the street, to get some ice cream. As I passed the dorm, I heard steps behind me. I turned around and I thought I saw someone in a white shirt tucked behind a big signboard. I kept walking, listening carefully. I heard something move and whipped around again. There, a person his size staring at me from behind a tree. I couldn't see very well, but it really looked like him. I was mildly freaked out by then, but just walked a little bit faster. I'd hear the occasional footsteps and breathing behind me, but I didn't dare stop or let on that I knew someone, probably him, was there. I knew he owned a gun and would likely put a bullet into me given the chance, He was that psycho and upset that I dared to break up with him. I walked all the way to the Union and got some ice cream and just sat there in the store eating it, unwilling to go back out into the unlit street in case it was my crazy armed ex. I still hadn't mustered the nerve to head back when my phone buzzed. My heart just about fell out of my chest when I saw the message. It was some of my friends, a sweet couple. They'd been walking way behind me when they saw something that alarmed them enough to text me. "Your ex is walking around the street." They called me before I could even text them back. "Where are you? Your ex is prowling around here near your dorm. He was coming back from the direction of the Union. Think he had a gun. Was he with you? What's going on?" Panicked, I assured them that I had not been with him, but somebody who looked like him had been following me, and I was at the Union and was too scared to go back alone. They practically yelled at me to stay there and not go anywhere, and that they were coming. A few minutes later, they came running into the Union, breathless, eyes wide, asking me why he was by my dorm and what had happened. This was possibly what scared me most of all. The boyfriend, who is a black belt in karate and is never scared, looked absolutely terrified. He was coiled into some kind of fighting stance and looked around wildly, afraid that my ex would appear with his gun. They told me they were taking me back to my dorm and calling the police. They sandwiched me between them, and we walked back to my dorm as quickly as we dared. The boyfriend walking in front and yelling into the darkness that my ex had better not try anything. I let the two of them into my dorm, and we went up to my room, where my roommates put in a frantic call to the police. As we peeked out the windows facing the street inside of the dorm, there he was, lurking in the trees to the side of the dorm looking up. A streetlight reflected something in his hand, something shiny. I saw him tug at the .22 I realized he was carrying and look up. We locked eyes and I saw something, this kind of rage in his eyes that froze me. In that moment I knew he really was out to kill me, and my friends and I had foiled him this time. He quickly turned and ran away through the trees. We didn't know whether he would come back and try to break in or something, so we called the police again, and lo and behold, sirens within minutes and officers with guns drawn combing the area. They caught him a few hours later, still with the .22 in hand. He confessed he was indeed going to kill me if he had the chance, but he didn't want to take pot shots at me with my friends there. Apparently, since I had broken up with him, I was given over to Satan, and he had a duty to make sure I died and went to hell. Of course, he went to jail and later to a mental hospital, and I moved out of that dorm a week later. I just couldn't live with the thought that he could break out and come after me again. I got some cop friends to keep an eye on my roommates until they could move out too. I have really never been the same after that. I was so afraid and paranoid for years and years. Now I can be out and about without any fear, but I still have nightmares about him staring at me through the trees, gun in hand and rage in his eyes. I've gone back and forth on whether to post this. Not because I'm embarrassed or because I think people won't believe me, but because writing it out means I have to put it in order again, and putting it in order is what makes it the most disturbing. When it was happening, it was scattered enough that I could rationalize each piece. Laid out start to finish, it doesn't have a lot of room for that. This was about 18 months ago. I live in a quiet suburb, kind of neighborhood where everybody has a front lawn and a driveway, and the streets are wide enough that kids ride bikes down the middle of them in the summer. I've been here for about 6 years. I know my neighbors reasonably well. Nothing deep, but we wave and we talk across the fence occasionally, and we know each other's names. It's the kind of place where you notice when something is off because nothing is usually off at all. I live alone. I work from home 3 days a week and commute the other 2. I mention the work from home days because they matter later. The first thing happened on a Tuesday morning in early March. I was at my desk in the spare bedroom I use as a home office, about an hour into my workday. My desk faces the window which looks out over the side yard and the narrow strip of grass between my house and my neighbor Carol's fence. I wasn't looking out the window, just working, but motion in my peripheral vision made me glance up. A man was standing in my side yard. He was just standing there, maybe 20 feet from the window facing the house. Middle-aged, medium height, dark jacket. He wasn't doing anything, not walking through, not looking at his phone, and not appearing to have any clear reason to be in my narrow strip of yard between my house and my neighbor's fence, just standing and looking at the house. I watched him for a few seconds and he didn't move. I stood up from my desk, and by the time I was fully upright, he had turned and walked back towards the street, disappearing around the front of the house. I went to the front window in time to see him walking down the sidewalk, away from my house at a normal pace. He didn't look back. I stood at the window for a minute. My first instinct was that he was checking utility lines or a meter or something, but he hadn't been looking up at anything. He'd been looking at the house straight on. I didn't recognize him from the neighborhood. After a few minutes, I went back to my desk and got back to work. And by that afternoon, I had mostly set it aside. Strange but not alarming. People cut through yards. People stop and look at houses for all kinds of reasons. I didn't think about it again for almost 2 weeks, I'd say. The second thing happened on another work from home day, Thursday. I was in the kitchen making lunch around noon and I heard something at the back of the house. A light sound, brief, like something contacting the back door. Not a knock, more like a single quiet tap or the sound of a hand testing a handle. I went to the back door and looked through the small window set into it. Nobody on the back step. I opened the door and looked out at the backyard. Empty. I checked the door handle, locked as it always was. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looked around the yard and went back inside. That evening I mentioned it to my neighbor Tom across the street when I saw him getting his mail. I described the man I'd seen in the side yard 2 weeks prior. Dark jacket, middle-aged, medium height. Tom thought about it and shook his head. Didn't ring a bell. He asked if I'd seen anything else, and I told him about the sound at the back door that afternoon. He suggested it was probably an animal, like a raccoon or a stray cat bumping against the door. I nodded and said he was probably right and went back inside. I want to be honest about my state of mind at this point. I wasn't scared, but I was mildly alert in the way you get when a couple of small things happen close together, but I wasn't reading it as a pattern yet. I checked my logs that night before bed the way I always did, maybe with slightly more attention than usual, and slept fine. The third thing happened 11 days later. Another work from home day. I was on a video call in the late morning, sitting at my desk, and about 20 minutes into the call, I happened to glance at the window again. The same man was in the side yard. Same spot as before. Same dark jacket. Same stillness, looking at the house. I kept my expression neutral because I was on camera and kept talking for about 30 seconds before I excused myself, said I had a quick situation to deal with, and muted myself. By the time I got to the window, he was already moving, the same as before, turned and walked toward the street without hurrying. I went to the front of the house. He was already at the end of my block walking away. I called the non-emergency police line. I described the man and gave them both dates and the approximate time of the most recent sighting. The officer I spoke to was polite and took the information down. He said they would have a patrol car do some passes through the neighborhood and that I should call back if I saw the man again or if anything else happened. He asked if anything was missing or damaged. I said no. He said to make sure my doors and windows were locked and to consider a doorbell camera. Thanked him and hung up. I ordered a doorbell camera that afternoon. It arrived 2 days later and I installed it myself. Front door coverage, pretty wide angle, motion activated. I also bought a separate, smaller camera for the back door that I mounted above the frame, pointing down at the back step. Both are fed to an app on my phone. I felt better almost immediately after installing them. Whatever this was, I'd have something concrete next time. For the next 3 weeks, nothing happened. The cameras picked up the usual things. Carol's cat crossing the front walk, a delivery driver, and a kid retrieving a ball from a yard. Nothing weird. My alertness faded back to baseline. I started to wonder if the man had just been someone passing through, and maybe someone who'd been looking at houses in the area for some reason, and if the back door sound had been an animal after all. But then one morning I woke up and checked my phone out of a habit, before getting out of bed, flipping through the motion notifications from overnight, the way I'd gotten used to doing. There were 4 from the front camera, all time-stamped between 2 and 3 in the morning. I sat up and opened the first one. The front camera had captured a figure standing on the sidewalk directly in front of my house. Not on my property, just on the public sidewalk, but stopped and facing the house. The image quality was decent, but the distance and the darkness made it hard to make out details. Dark jacket, medium height. The second notification was from about 11 minutes later. He was still there, same position. The third was from about 20 minutes after that. He had moved to the edge of my front walk, the point where the public sidewalk meets the path up to my front door. He was standing at the boundary of my property, looking up at the house. The fourth was about 5 or 6 after that. The front walk was empty. I sat in bed with my phone for a long time. More motion captures spanning almost 40 minutes. Between 2 and 3 in the morning, of a man standing outside my house in the dark. Not on my property until that last position, but working toward it incrementally over the course of those 40 minutes. I I called the police again, this time the non-emergency line, and then sent the footage directly to the email address the officer gave me. A patrol car came by within an hour. 2 officers looked at the footage on my phone, took copies, and walked around the exterior of the house with me. Everything was locked and undisturbed. They told me to keep the cameras running and to call immediately if I saw the man in person again. I asked them directly if they thought I was in danger. One of them paused before answering and said that the behavior was consistent with somebody who was casing the property. I appreciated the honesty. I didn't sleep well that night though, or the several nights after. A little over a week later, on a Saturday morning, I came downstairs to make coffee and found my back door unlocked. I stood in the kitchen staring at it. I had not used that back door in over a week. I checked the back camera app immediately. The footage from the previous night showed nothing. No motion alerts, no figures. I went to the door and looked at the frame and the lock mechanism closely. There were faint scratches around the keyhole that I could not say with certainty were new. They could have been there for months without me ever noticing. I called the police, and this time I asked for someone to come out. An officer spent about 45 minutes at the house. He examined the back door lock and said the scratching was consistent with someone attempting to pick or manipulate it. He could not say definitively when it had happened. He could not say whether whoever it was had successfully got inside at any point. Nothing in the house was visibly disturbed. Nothing was missing, but the lock had clearly been worked on. The officer recommended I replace the lock immediately, which I did that same afternoon. I also had a locksmith reinforce the door frame on both the front and back doors. I bought a motion sensor alarm for the back door that would trigger if it were opened. Here's what I think about most when I think about this. Between the first time I saw that man in my side yard and the morning I found my back door unlocked, 2 months had passed. 2 months of slow, patient, incremental behavior. Standing in the yard, testing the back door, coming back to the side yard weeks later, standing on the sidewalk at 2 a.m. for 40 minutes, working toward the door again. At no point in those 2 months did he do anything on its own that would have gotten him arrested. Each individual piece was deniable or explainable. Taken together, they told a very clear story that was only fully visible in hindsight. I don't know who he was. The police never identified him from the footage. It was never quite clear enough. After the lock was replaced and the door frame was reinforced, and the alarm installed, the activity stopped. Never saw him in the side yard again. The overnight camera has never picked up anyone standing outside since. Whether he moved on to somewhere easier or whether something else changed, I have no clue. What I do know is that for 2 months, somebody was studying my house, learning my schedule, and working toward getting inside. He knew which days I was home. Came to work on work-from-home days when my car was in the driveway. Except for the overnight footage. Every in-person sighting was on a Tuesday or Thursday. He knew the back door was weaker than the front. He was patient enough to take 2 months doing this quietly, rather than just acting. I still check the camera app every morning before I get out of bed. I don't think I'll ever stop doing that.